Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 734 for the 27th of February. We're going to start off with the frontline changes report, and there is two major frontline change. Two different regions with major frontline change, and we start off with Avdiivka Front. So at the Avdiivka Front, this is Avdiivka city. The Russians have already captured this some time ago, and in the latest update, we have coming from pro-Ukrainian sources that the Russian forces have captured the rest of the southern part of Stepove. So this means that Stepove is now secured, with the Russian forces having a good control over. There's a distance. In fact, we already have a Russian soldier basically, taking its unique colors, scrolling to the southwestern point of Stepove to take a video of him, raising their unit flag. And this actually shows how safe it is for him, which means the front line is actually quite a distance away from where Stepove is. So the fact that he is so calm shows that the front line is really far. And in another geolocation by Kreminna Front, showing that Russian forces are attacking this very position, which also means that the Russian forces have actually progressed over in the northwestern part of the Kupyansk, continue to try to attempt to straighten the front line in the south or southwestern part of Stepove. So this will allow the Russian forces to conduct operations in support of the attack at Vuhledar, as well as hitting into the south of Vuhledar. So this is currently happening. This is a frontline change over at the Stepove at the Avdiivka Front. Another frontline change is over at the surprise attack at Krasnohorivka over at the Donetsk Front. So we reported that the Russians reported, correct, attack into the southern part of Krasnohorivka. We now have some bits of corroboration from the Ukrainian side. The pro-Ukrainian mapping shows that the Russian forces have taken this area here. So this area here is now, actually I should use red color, is now corroborated by Ukrainian mapping that the Russian forces have actually taken this area here. And this also more or less basically secure this Trudovskaya mine, which is now probably most firmly under Russian control. And this also helps to give us some illumination as to how the Russians managed to reach the southern outskirts of Krasnohorivka. Given this mapping change, which means that the Russians actually stormed down the road, the main road, from Marinka region all the way up to Krasnohorivka, and this is where they spread out. This is actually, how the Ukrainian mapping actually give us some direction as to how the Russians actually reach this area here. So this is the frontline changes. And we move on to the strategic and tactical reporting. And we start off, of course, with the Ukrainian claims of shooting down of Russian jets. This time now, over the past 24 hours, 2 times Sukhoi 34 was shot down over Ukraine. There's no details as to how and where and when. So this, you just have to take their words for it. And the Russians also conducted, in retaliation, missile strikes on the Poltava air base. So there's an air base in the northern part of Poltava. And so according to this, to the pro-Russian sources, they say that a Sea King Mk-41 and a Mi-8 was destroyed in this strike. And another strike was also reported over at the Kropyvnytsky region. The Krovolgrad air base was hit as well. There is no details as to know what was hit over at this air base. Based on the pre-war satellite imagery, this looks like a helicopter air base, but of course it can be used for fighter jets as well if they want to. And there is also another airport over here. This is their local airport, so this most likely can also be used for military aircraft. We can see here it's just all civilian aircraft. But definitely this can be adapted for military use. So I'm not exactly sure which airbase or which airport was destroyed, or not, rather got hit. Airbase cannot be destroyed, just in case you do not know. It just cannot be destroyed. And so that's all for this out of frontline reporting. And in the southern front, over at the Kherson region, we actually do not have any reports about fighting over at the bridgeheads, So that is, getting a bit interesting, a bit sus. I feel that the Krinky is over. Given the lack of mention of Krinky in the Ukrainian report, there's no airstrikes being reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry about any hitting of Krinky. Because previously they were talk about Russian airstrike and artillery strike Krinky, but we haven't seen that report for some time. It looks like the rumors are true that Krinky has been abandoned by the Ukrainian forces, and there is a Ukrainian Sukhoi 25 getting shot down over Mykhailovka, and so this is along this Indulets River or Ingulets River, and so that is a Sukhoi 25 probably trying to do some airstrikes on the Russian position, and then it got hit. And then there is also a Russian. Should be a guided missile attack, a guided missile from probably a helicopter hitting Ukrainian forces over in the southern part of Sadove. So that's all we know of the southern front. It looks like it's going to become a dead front, as we see. So it's going to get less and less things to talk about over this front line, and we move on to the Zaporizhzhia Front, and this is Zaporizhzhia city, and this is the Zaporizhzhia Front. So this is Kremsky sector, Orikhiv sector, and Huyapole sector. And on the grand scale of things, there's nothing over at the Kremsky sector. The fighting mainly is over at this Orikhiv and Huyapole. Russian forces are attacking at Levatny, Melenivka, Mafopil, over in the northwestern part of Verbove, and at Robotine. Ukrainian forces counterattack at Verbove. I should use gold color. Verbove, northwestern part of Verbove, at Mafopil. And this is the current strategic situation, which means that there is active clash over in 3 different areas, over at the Mafopil region, northwest of Verbove, as well as the Robotine region. The situation at Robotine continues to be the same due to the mining, the remote mining by the Ukrainian forces on the 24th of February. The Russian forces are still stuck at Robotine. They are still unable to get out just yet. And fighting now is concentrated over on the northwestern part of Verbove. According to information from the Russian sources, they are trying to push out in this area here. They are trying to push out in the northwestern part of Verbove. And the Ukrainian forces actually launched a major counterattack against them. And however, there is no headway in terms of this counterattack. So these are active clashes over in the northwestern part of Verbove. And this push in the northwestern part of Verbove is rather dangerous for the Ukrainians because this is heading in this direction. And this could potentially go up and cut off the highway and then causing this front line over here in the southwestern part of Novoporovska to break. So this is why the Ukrainians are now trying to stop this advance around here. And of course, this could also be coupled with a potential Russian attack coming from the northwestern part of Robotine, causing a outer pincer. So the Ukrainian forces definitely is not willing to allow the Russian forces to just do whatever they want. So and then there is reports of the counterattack over at Robotine. So that's very interesting, which means that the Ukrainians are trying to continue to pin down the Russian forces that are trying to move out and capture the rest of the settlement. Any mention of the capture of Robotine is definitely not true. This is definitely not a captured town for sure. So I have both my primary sources from the Ukrainian and the Russian side both confirming that Robotine is definitely still very, very contested. In fact, on the Ukrainian mapping, Robotine is entirely under Ukrainian control. So only the Russian mapping shows that half of Robotine is under Russian control. So you have to take a pinch of salt about the situation around here. And that's all for this part. And interesting part is actually at Mafopil. So at Huyapole sector, so this is Huyapole, and at the Mafopil, the Ukrainian forces was reported to be attacking over at Mafopil, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, 26 and 27. And so this is a continuous attack from the Ukrainians. However, based on information coming from the Russian sources, the Russian OSINT sources, apparently this is actually a Russian attack. So they reported that the Russian forces is north of Mafopil actually advanced kilometers in a night attack by several assault groups, and they actually managed to partially knock out the Ukrainian forces in the Dacha region. So this area here, this is actually a Dacha region for Huaypole, and the Russian forces actually stomped into this Dacha in the middle of the night. So actually it's more like a Russian attack rather than a Ukrainian attack. But of course, the Russian Defense Ministry will, unless they are really winning, they will just say that no, they will just report the counter-attack as if it's a Ukrainian attack. So which means that there is this active clash that is probably happening over the past 2 days already. So the Russians are making a push in this direction towards Huaypole. That's actually rather interesting. We will continue to monitor to see what is the objective of the Russian forces. Huaypole is an extremely important, strategically important city. It's a transport hub. It's a road hub. You can see the roads fanning out in multiple directions. This is actually a lot like Bakhmut. But of course, once the battle comes to this area, it becomes just a frontline city. But once it's captured, it denies the Ukrainians from using it as a transport hub, and it links all the way up to Orikhiv, which is another transport hub. So this is and then there's another road linking all the way up to Velika Novosilka sector, which is the Velika Novosilka city, which is yet another transport hub. So these are all very strategically important. Taking of this city will totally messed up the logistic and transportation of the Ukrainian forces along the front line. So which means that the Ukrainian forces will find it harder to reinforce one another if this city is taken. So this is why it's strategically important. It's not that strategically important if the Russians capture it, unless they are moving the front line further to the rear. Then yes, then the Huaypole will start to become strategically important. If not, no, it would just be like Bakhmut. It's just a frontline city. It's not very useful once it's just a frontline city. But it would deny the Ukrainians a strategically important city. And we move on over at the Donetsk Front. So this is Donetsk city. This is Donetsk city, and on the western part of Donetsk city is the what I call the Donetsk Front. This is the Donetsk Front. Velika Novosilka sector, the Zolotaneva Prashestivka sector, the Vuhledar sector, and the Marinka sector. So on the strategic scale, we have a lot of Russian attacks in this region here. On top of the attack, which is just nearby over at Levadne, in the Huaypole sector in the Zaporizhzhia Front, there is Russian attack over at Staromayoske, Uruzhaine, at the south of Vuhledar, at Novomikhailivka, and at the west and the southwest of Vuhledar, Georgievka, south of Krasnohorivka, and at Krasnohorivka. So this is the strategic picture over at this situation, and you can see this. The Marinka sector is where the main punch is, where the Russians are punching the hardest. So there's nothing really to talk about in the Velika Novosilka sector per se, and except that there was a video footage, the drone footage of the airstrike on the southern part of Uruzhaine, and this footage basically just confirmed that the Ukrainians have full control over Uruzhaine. And yeah, they are getting hammered by Russian airstrikes, and yeah, that's about it. Which also shows that these reports of attack is not really assault. This is still very positional in nature. And the interesting one is actually the south of Vuhledar. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they mentioned south of Vuhledar very specifically, which means that the Russians are pushing from the Polivka region or from the western part of Mikhailsk against Vuhledar. We will continue to monitor and see how this develops, whether this is actually a serious assault on Vuhledar. Vuhledar is very, very devastated as a city. It is a fortress city given the unique architecture in this area here, because it is a high-rise building in the middle of literally almost nowhere. So this becomes a fortress of salt, and everything everywhere else around here is pretty flat. So this is just farmland regions. So this is a very unique region. It is acting as a stronghold, as a fortress for the Ukrainians, and it is indeed a stronghold and a fortress. The Russians have tried previously around a year ago, or more than a year ago, to try to storm Vuhledar to no avail. And over the Marinka sector, Novomikhailivka continues to be this enigma. We still do not know what exactly is happening. We do know that the Russians are indeed still trying to soften up the Ukrainian forces. There's a geolocation of a great attack, a rocket attack on the Ukrainian forces in the northern part of Novo-Mikhailivka, which means that Russians still have not really managed to push through in the northern part of Novo-Mikhailivka. As I mentioned before, the Russians will need to push all the way down and in order to attack in multiple directions to collapse the city. So without the northern flank, I think this Novo-Mikhailivka is going to get stuck. However, we do have interesting information. The Russian Defense Ministry mentioned Antonovka in their report. This is Antonivka, and I'm not sure if this is actually a fire attack, like a shelling report, which would not make a lot of sense to me, or it could actually be a slow attack in this direction towards Antonivka. The Ukrainian side actually reported something different. They said they actually reported west of Vuhledar or Bobeda, and which means that the Russians are pushing in this direction as well. So it is now looking at two possible directions. And this both can actually be correct. It could be the Russians trying to fan out from two different directions. We still have not have any information coming from the OSINT, the open source intelligence, those like RIBA or Deep State UA. So we can't confirm the details. The Ministry of Defenses will not give us the details. But given the direction that they talked about is pretty interesting. And there is also the Russian Defense Ministry's announcement of the capture of Bojeda. So that's very interesting. This actually is announced by Shoigu himself in some briefing. So Georgievka continues, is going to start to become a scam very soon. And over at Krasnohorivka, we have the corroboration from Ukrainian mapping showing that the Russians indeed is making a progress south of Krasnohorivka, and this gives us the direction that the Russians actually progress down the main road, rather than this one, rather than the tree line on the western part is actually down the main road and attack into the southern part of Krasnohorivka. However, there is still no confirmation of the Russian forces in the southern part of Krasnohorivka just yet. We will continue to wait for more information, but FPV drones are indeed already wreaking havoc in the southern part of Krasnohorivka. There is already a geolocation of a strike over along this southern district of Krasnohorivka. And so the Russian and Ukrainian Defense Ministry both already acknowledged the fighting at Krasnohorivka. So the fighting is definitely on for this city. And we move on over to the next front line from the Avdiivka Front into the Avdiivka Front. What did I just say? Okay, we are moving on from the Donetsk Front into the Avdiivka Front. So this is Avdiivka city, and this is the Avdiivka Front, and this is looking really different right now. The front line is moving away. Previously, it was always like that. It was always some shapes, and now it looks like a different shape. Yeah. Deep analysis and insight coming from the DPA. And so the Russian forces are now attacking over at Bedaichi, Stepove, Olivka, Tonenke, Pervomaiske, and Nevelske. Ukrainian counterattack is being reported over at Pervomaiske and Bedaichi, I believe. I think there's nothing over on this side. Yeah. So this is the Ukrainians are actually trying to hold out the flanks, but they are not really doing much seemingly in the central part, which might suggest that they are struggling. They are trying to get away from the kill zone. That might be the possibility, which is why the no counterattack is being reported. And there are also video footage coming out from this region here showing from the Russian Defense Ministry, in fact, of Ukrainian forces running away from Zhevene. And they are very proud. They announced the capture of Zhevene in a separate report, in a video footage as well. So the Russians are now attacking Tonenke. We have no detailed information. Fighting is also at Olivka. Also, we don't have detailed information tentatively. So we're going to get a surprise tomorrow. Suddenly the front line is going to jump, given our experience over here. Pervomaiske, nothing to talk about. There's some clashes. And over in the northern part, where northwest of the Coke plant, where Stepove is interesting. Russian forces, Ukrainian mapping have acknowledged the fall of Stepove, geolocation of the flag of the colors being raised, or rather not raised but unfurled in the southwestern part of the Stepove by a soldier, clearly shows how safe it is for him to just stand like this, showing the Russians have secured full control over this region here. And the geolocation also shows the Russian forces are pushing in the south of Stepove. Looks like they're going to go down this tree line towards Semenivka and cut off the communication route between Badaichi and the rest of the front line over at the southern part of Avdiivka. So this push is imminent towards Semenivka. I think Ukrainian forces right here is going to consider really hard. Should they run or should they fight? No, it's going to be a very, very difficult decision. I mean, if I'm the Ukrainian soldier at the front line, and if I have access to the DPA's report, I will panic. I will panic. So I would not sure if I even want to stay there to to withstand all the shelling. But running away also is dangerous. No FPV drone will hit me. Yeah, tough decision. So the fighting is now over at Badaichi. Ukrainians are counter-attacking in the direction of Petrovskoye over here. And so this is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. However, Ukraine and Ryba all reported about the fighting at Badaichi already. So situation is definitely developing very quickly in this front line. Very, very interesting. And I'm holding on for a thumbnail. Yeah, so that's if I remember about the thumbnail. So that's all for the Avdiivka Front. And we move on over to the New York Front. At the New York Front, Ukrainian forces this time round attack at New York region. The Russians fought attack at Mayorsk. So this is the strategic situation over at the New York or Horivka Front. I don't want to call it Horivka Front. The reason is because although it sounds like a Horivka Front, a lot more because Horivka is a much more prominent city, but it's unlikely that the Ukrainians will push towards Horivka because they never even tried. So because the firm front line is over here, so that's why I always call it the New York Front. And we move on away from New York into the Bakhmut Front. So this is Bakhmut city, and this is the Bakhmut Front. In the southern flank of the Bakhmut Front, the Russian forces continue their usual stuff, attacking at Klishevka, Andreevka, and Kudyomivka. There is still no news about the Avdiivka push, so I think that is just a probing attack, and that's it from the southern flank. Over the northern flank, situation also is the same. The Russian forces are attacking at Vuhledar region at Ivanivsky. So that's all. There's nothing much. There is a TOS-1A attack, the thermobaric missile attack over in the forest north of Ivanivsky. It might be a precursor to the Russians trying to push through the forest towards Chasivya. So because the use of that weaponry is to clear fortifications and entrenchments, and once that one hit, the assault can actually go forward. But I'm not sure if the Russians actually do it in this way, because so far when I saw the videos from the Russian side, they use TOS-1A, the thermobaric barrage. It's just to destroy the personnel. It never follows up with an assault. So yeah, so that's it. That's all for the Bakhmut Front, very short one. And over at the Siversk Front, there is no reports of attack except at Rozalivka. There is an attack being reported here. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they said that the Russians attacked at Rozalivka. I'm always very interested to look at this front, but it never happens. Things doesn't last. We'll continue to monitor and see whether the Russians are going to be serious this time. But the chances are they are not going to be serious about this attack. Over at the Kreminna Front, this is Kreminna city. The Russians are attacking over at Terny as usual, and the Ukrainians are counter-attack at Terny. The same thing as usual, so there's nothing really to talk about. And move on away from the Kreminna Front. Nothing at Stepove, we move into the Kupyansk Front. So at the Kupyansk Front, there's a continuation of what happened as per what we reported yesterday. The Russians are attacking at Sinkivka, Ivanivka, as well as Tabaivka. And so this continues to be the case. The Russians seems to be continuing to try to push in this area here. And I'm not sure if this will develop as some kind of a big pincer attack. So let me redraw in this way. I'm not sure if this is the intention. But the interesting thing is that there is a geolocation of Russian assault in the area of Avdiivka. So this assault is a Russian attack. They land troops over at this northern part of Avdiivka. However, we already had the announcement of the capture of Avdiivka by the Russian side. So the assault to be happening around here seems a bit weird, which means that they did not actually entrench and hold a position around here. They actually hold a position much more in the rear. But anyway, we will continue to monitor and see how this progress. I'm surprised that the Russians never took out Krasnohorivka or Kaislivka. So yeah, I wonder what's the deal with the Russians. They're very, very suspicious. And that's all from the Kupyansk Front. And there's nothing over the front at the border region. So this is the summary for the day of 734 for the 27th of February. And let's talk some conclusions. So I continue to be quite puzzled about all these Sukhoi 34s getting shot down over Ukraine. I'm not sure how the Ukrainians are doing it. And if it's true, that means that there is still a lot more Patriot systems around, because the Sukhoi 34s are used to drop the glide bombs, and they don't have to fly very near to the front line. So which means that they have to be engaged in a further distance. And the two surface-to-air missile systems that I noticed to be operating is the Patriots, maybe, and the NASAM, the North American surface-to-air missile system. But the NASAM is a shorter range surface-to-air missile system. It's not as long range as the Patriot, because they are using the MRAM as the missile system. So it's a bit unclear whether they can actually operate in that way. There is and then we also have the Ukrainians getting their planes shot down as well. So both are claiming each things at each other. We just have to take it with a pinch of salt. The Russians are also seemingly ramping up their attack on the air bases. So this is already not the first time we have reported over the past week that the Russians attacked the air bases. And when we look at the weather, let me refresh. Okay, we're gonna jump back to Singapore again. In terms of the Ukraine, the winter seems to be over. The temperature is firmly over 0 degrees, which is why any video footages that turn out to have snow is definitely dated. And the ground is going to look like the 2 years ago when the conflict just started. Everything is just brown and dirty and devastating looking because winter is over. They're waiting for spring to land, and I believe the spring is probably coming soon. Given this temperature, I think the plants, the trees, and the grass is going to grow very, very soon. So the temperature is definitely way above 0, but there's no rain yet. Everything looks really dry right now. 0, 0, 0, 0 everywhere. So that's why everything looks really dry and devastating. If we look at the movement, there is literally no rain. So the Rasputin is not here yet. It might be coming soon. So the Russians are definitely taking advantage of the situation, which is exactly the same timing, the same month that they used to launch an attack on Ukraine. So given the Russians knowing their climate pretty well, they probably thought that this period of time, February to March-ish area, this time zone is the best time to launch an attack. So probably this is why we are looking at the Russian offensive right now. And this offensive is likely based on this situation continue for another month. And then things is going to start to get sucky. So it's going to get difficult and more difficult given the rain falling. So, and then everything get muddy. So which means that we will continue to expect the Russian offensive to go on for another month, given the first year's experience of how the Russians attack Ukraine. And in terms of the frontline change, Krinky looks to be really, really suspicious. There's no more mention of Krinky in the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's report for some time. There's also no more footages coming out from the Russian side of FPV attacks or artillery shelling or airstrikes on Krinky. It looks like Krinky is gone, given the lack of concrete or solid evidence of Ukrainian presence over there. So we will continue to monitor and to see whether we can acknowledge that. The Russians are continuing to get stuck over at Robotini. Probably due to the mining and then the Ukrainians reinforcement coming to hold the line. The Russians now concentrate their attention over in the northwestern part, but it was quickly shut down by Ukrainian counterattack. So we will continue to see how this developed. So this salient did not fall as fast as I imagined. The Ukrainians did a very good job at throwing the mines down and stopping the advance. So we will continue to see whether they will be able to hold the assault. Maybe, the Ukrainians are a lot more, competent than how I imagine them to be over at this front line. Another interesting part is the Mariupol region. The Russian push over at the Mariupol. So previously it was thought to be a Ukrainian attack. Turns out, coming from Russian sources, it is actually more of a Russian attack, and they are pushing towards Huaypole. So this is a very, very interesting attack, and for battles to come to Huaypole is going to be a massive, massive strategic setback for the Ukrainians, because this is an important transport hub. So if this fall, then you're going to see a massive, massive detour. You can see that the highway system looks like this. So this is the highway system from Orikhiv. This leads all the way to Zaporizhzhia. This leads all the way down to Constantinople. And there's a main road coming down to Velika Novosilka as well. And of course, there's a main road coming to Velika Novosilka. But the above ones, these are the highway. And so if Huaypole is gone, then this entire highway becomes rather not usable. And any advances or reinforcement, let's say from Orikhiv, they have to go one big round if they want to use the highway, or they have to use the smaller roads to help to hold a new front line should Huaypole fall. So this is actually very, very important for the Ukrainians. Less important in terms of the Russians' operational needs. But if the Russians get it, if they manage to conquer Huaypole, then they're going to incur a strategic I wouldn't say strategic defeat. I think that's a bit too big of a word, but strategic obstacles for the Ukrainians. So that is something that I think is interesting to watch. And all these probings attack at Malinivka, Levatne, Staromayorsky, Uruzhaine, you see, and then another push at Mariupol. It's just in general very interesting that the Russians are probing along all the lines, trying to stretch the Ukrainian forces. We will continue to wait and see how this goes. Attack from the south of Vuhledar, of course, is very, very interesting. I wonder if this will develop into a major assault into the Vuhledar region, into the Vuhledar city. Not sure if this will happen. This is just the first report of this kind, attack south of Vuhledar. So for a long time, the last time the Russians pushed from this area here was long time ago. So we'll wait and see. Novomihailivka, when did? And then now another interesting one is this Vuhledar. The Russians capturing of Vuhledar is now confirmed by the Russian Defense Ministry. They are now pushing west of Vuhledar, and this actually is confirmed by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The fact that the Ukrainians actually say west of Vuhledar means that they actually quietly acknowledge the fall of this town, and the Russians are pushing west according to the Ukrainians. The Russian mentioned Antonivka, suggesting the possibility of their pushing southwest. So it remains to be seen where they are heading. There's a good chance the Russians may actually just head down the highway towards Konstantinivka. So, and if they do, this is going to be catastrophic, because the front line area here around the Novomihailivka region requires Konstantinivka's survival. So we will wait and see how this progress in this front line. Just interesting. If the Russians really do this, it's going to become part of the one of those battles to be written into the history textbook. How they destroyed a very strong line of defense by actually hitting into the rear. So the kind of thing. And we move on. The Krasnohorivka situation is now corroborated. We have the news of the Russians actually pushing down the highway, not the highway, the main road towards Krasnohorivka. This is how they reached there. But no news regarding the battles inside of Krasnohorivka. So we'll wait and see. Avdiivka continues to be the same thing. The Russians are trying to push through the south region. Fighting is now at Olivka and Tonenke. So they're going to push towards Umanske and in this general arrow direction. And the fall of Stepove must be very devastating for the Ukrainians, and they're going to continue to push directly towards Semenivka, because Berdaichi is actually a very strong defensive position for the Ukrainians. If the Russians push through to Semenivka, this will break Berdaichi, and the Russians can attack from the rear positions, which is what they have done to all these very strong defenses, these strong lines over at Avdiivka. So, which is why I suspect this might be the objective of the Russians. Yeah, and Niu-York Front, nothing to talk about. Bakhmut Front, the only thing is Ivanivsky, but we are still waiting for more information. The Russians, according to Ryba, they say that they are continue to fight in the central part of the city. This is entirely not acknowledged yet by the Ukrainian side, so we'll wait and see. And the rest of the front line is not very important, except over at the Kupyansk Front. I mentioned in the SITREP, the Russians are attacking Ivanivska as well as pushing out of the Baivka. There's possibility that they are actually attempting one pincer movement to take out the very, very strong defenses over at Krasnohorivka and Kupyansk. So, but of course, things never turn out the way you plan. So let's see how this progress. And Sinkivka is a scam. Ignore it. And that's it. So thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. And the super panel with Willie OAM, History Legend, and Wild Siberia is almost about to reach 1,000 views. So if you have not catch it, do catch it. It already it is now the second highest viewed video. No, not second, third highest viewed video among all my videos. No, that's so sad. My videos are so not 100k type of videos. But anyway, so this is definitely trending to be at least the second most viewed video. The most viewed video by DPA is actually also the super panel, but for the first year, where we have Scott Ritter on with History Legend as well as Sanya Florida. So anyway, do catch it. It's very, very interesting. People who don't usually watch anything more than 30 minutes are hooked, and they actually watch the whole thing. So if you have not watched it, I bet you will love it. So thank you for watching again. Do press the like button, subscribe, and if you want to catch all these SITREP uncut with no ads, join the Patreon. Give me to help to provide a safety net for DPA, and I'll see you guys in the next update.